Hi everyone, I'm Candace with Eclectic Coach, and I'm excited to be back with you. I sometimes take breaks, but I'm back and I'm excited about it. And today we're going to be talking about enhancing your problem solving ability. And this is something I love to work with people, my coaching clients around about not only how to brainstorm new ideas, but to execute on those ideas and measure progress and really follow through. Because some of us kind of get stuck in loops of constant ideation, or some of us get stuck in loops of invulnerability and we don't want to ask anyone for help. So we just keep going over and over all the details that we already know. And so that leads me to my next piece of advice on enhancing your problem solving ability, and that is understanding your personality type. And when I say that, I'm referring to specifically the 16 personality types developed by Carl Jung initially, and then was adapted into the MBTI model. There's a lot of information online about what type you are. There's a lot of free tests, and before I work with clients on this, I like them to go get their personality type. It should feel like a fit, and it should really, like when you read it, you should be like, yeah, that's me. And if there's some vagueness, some ambiguity, because it does work on a spectrum, then maybe you need to look at different articles on an INFJ versus an INTJ. I mistyped the first time I did it. And for some reason, I see a lot of INFPs mistype as INTJs or ESFPs, ENFPs. So really kind of narrowing it down to which type you most likely are and which one really fits so that you can understand your cognitive stack can be such a useful model on where to put in energy in specific activities that engage with that cognitive function, where it exists in your stack, and where to kind of pull back and withdraw some of those energies when you see that you're in a grip, for example. And I'm making videos on this, so be sure to check those out. Now, understanding your personality type is great because it helps you quickly recognize very common reoccurring problems, and those reoccurring problems have clear-cut solutions on alternative behavior and alternative perspectives that you can take that can quickly get you out of a loop, which I just did a video about, where you're looping your dominant function, where you experience the most flow, what comes most naturally to you, and your tertiary function, which is going to have the same kind of flavor because it's either introverted or extroverted. And it shows where we overactively consume. We overactively consume if we're introverted. Information, YouTube videos, online content, movies, poetry, art, to a point where it's not healthy and we need to be focusing on something else. Or maybe you loop and overconsume in an extroverted way and you are engaged in way too many activities and you maybe consume people's time, their energy, and you need to be constantly stimulated when what you really need to do is pause and reflect. So one way to solve problems quickly is to address the behavioral patterns, and the video I just made is about what throws us into that loop. And I'm going to be making some videos on the different types, the 8 sentinel types, and then the other 8 intuitive types. Now, these are just words that they've kind of made up to codify the different types, and how they loop, and some suggestions for how to get out of it. So be sure to check that out. But understanding what your type is a worthwhile investment. There's a reason why intelligence agencies use this model, because let's say you're an introvert. If you have a lot of energy and things are going well for you in your life, you can present very much as an extrovert. But when things aren't going so well and you're under-resourced, you tend to behave true to type. And so understanding what type you are can be so, so helpful. And they even have open labs where they're measuring brain activity and activities that you do. And they are seeing a very strong correlation between different types and what parts of the brain light up. So taking the test, it's often free online, is worthwhile. Another thing is to look at the problem from different perspectives. This is why I love ChatGPT, for example. You can say, give me 10 interesting characters. And then you can pose the problem. I like to just talk into my phone so that it's really fast. I don't like to write things out. Or maybe I like to scribble it just so I can remember the idea as it's coming to me. And then talk it into my phone and then have it just organize and clean up all my thoughts. That's what I love it for. But maybe list a bunch of different characters and then list a scenario and say, have each one of these characters look at this problem from a different perspective. Or you can kind of prototype or avatar, I guess, some of the people that you know, some of the people that would be affected by this challenge or this problem that you're having, and take everything that you know about them and their concerns and their perspective, talk it into ChatGPT and say, give me every one of my 5 family members' perspective on this. This is what I think about what each one is probably feeling. Give me their perspective. If perspectives doesn't come easily to you or naturally to you. I'm an INFJ. I feel like it's one of our superpowers is we're really able to almost climb inside the mind of different people and understand their motives, understand their secret feelings, their thoughts, almost experience telepathy because of the unique way our cognitive stack works. But we're able to really see other people's perspectives. Other people, not so much. It's really, really, really challenging to even fathom why other people are doing what they're doing. And that's a very important piece of information. You want to know why people are doing what they're doing when you're working on a particular problem so that you understand the motivations of all the stakeholders that are involved in whatever's going on. It helps you understand the problem better. It also understands the personal dynamics that you're likely to be dealing with when solving said problem. Another thing is you can become more objective in how you're looking at the problem and step back and say, what are the facts? Who, what, where, when, and why? Facts. Observable facts. And just list those out. But let's say you're really, really good at being objective. And what you really need to understand is the emotional context in which this scenario is playing out. That's where looking at the problem from various different perspectives and personality types can be really helpful in understanding the emotional nature, the past experiences, and how that is impacting the challenge you're trying to overcome. Another thing is sometimes we get very, if they do this on purpose, they pull us in with our dopamine and we just start scrolling. We just start doom scrolling. We just start gathering lots and lots of information in a very unconscious way. And we're not really making any progress. But what we might want to start doing when we're learning about a challenge and we're trying to figure out different solutions is to stop scrolling, get really, really clear on the problem. Maybe write it out in one clear sentence. Avoid any sort of distraction. Maybe set a timer for about 25 minutes and make sure, because sometimes we don't do this, you give yourself a break afterwards. Because sometimes we get so into a problem that we inadvertently start the spiral without getting clarity. So you're going to want to stop scrolling, write out the problem, and focus only on gathering the information you need to address this specific problem directly. Not all the other possible scenarios, all the tangent relationships, these sideways journeys that you can go on where you're collecting all this other information that's not completely relevant to what you're trying to understand is really a great way to get really clear. Another thing is you can use the pain and pleasure principle consciously. And the pain and pleasure principle goes like this. Human beings are really, at the heart of it, driven by two things: the need to avoid pain and the need to gain pleasure. But the need to avoid pain is much, much stronger than the need to gain pleasure, although they're both important. And really look at the problem and highlight the consequences of any kind of inaction or distraction and the rewards of resolution to motivate yourself in meaningful ways. So really, pen to paper, no more than 5 or 10 minutes, because you don't want to turn it into a writing exercise because you're trying to solve the problem, not do a creative writing deal. That's not what's important. It's get really clear on, if I don't handle this, how is this going to negatively impact me? And the more specific and intense and vivid you can make the pain, your brain is going to wake up and be like, all right, I got to solve this problem. Because our minds kind of do interesting things sometimes, especially when we've got a problem in front of us and we just don't want to deal with it. Like sometimes we need to figure out this job project at work. And we just feel so overwhelmed by it. We're like, I think I'm going to go out with my friends and just not think about it. Or I think I'm going to go to sleep. Or I think I'm going to go drink at the bar. Or distract myself. Or binge watch the show. Or whatever. And we get so overwhelmed sometimes that we just avoid the whole problem altogether. And then it just grows bigger and bigger until we are forced to do something about it. And then it's really, really painful. So if we could just immediately, before the little molehill turns into a mountain, look at it and be like, what's it going to cost me if I don't deal with this now? I don't want this to turn into a major crisis. It's a challenge right now. But if I don't deal with it, all the things it's going to cost you financially, emotionally, physically. Really, really get into the pain of it. And then also in a separate column, write down the rewards of figuring out an effective solution. Another thing is track and monitor your progress. So this helps when you have accountability. This is why I do coaching. Like, I don't let my coaching call end without clear objectives that we're going to talk about the next time we talk about what you're going to do. And I don't tell you what you're going to do. I have you tell me, okay, what do you want to focus on? What do you want to do? And we go through, maybe even we do the pain or pleasure principle in the coaching session, but we have action items and then we follow up. And that accountability is so important because, when we were in smaller tribes and societies, if we didn't do what we said we were going to do, there were immediate consequences. Now we're more removed from people. We work remotely. We live less interdependently. Unless the person lives in your house and the challenge is directly related to them, we just can kind of put things off and we can kind of procrastinate. And it's even an acceptable part of our culture a little bit to allow things to slide and to not focus on them. And we give each other grace around it, and that's good. But getting accountability and somebody socially accountability saying, hey, did you do this X, Y, and Z? And really pausing and listening to what you have to say, not letting you just, oh yeah, and kind of get around it, but really going back and looking at it and tracking the progress, looking at, okay, well, what parts of it did you enjoy? What parts of it do you think you want to tweak? for this next week coming up? Do you want to keep it the same? Do you want to modify it? What worked? What totally didn't work? And that also gives you sort of an experimental attitude around said problem. And you don't have to be locked in or fixed into some sort of solution that doesn't work. Because sometimes we do that as well. Like if we know how to do one thing and to solve a problem, maybe we fixed our car that's been having like this leaking problem one way, but now the leak's back and we tried it and it's still not working. Sometimes we do the same thing over and over again because it worked one other time. And it's like maybe it's a completely different leak coming from a different place in the car, and maybe you got to fix it totally differently. So that helps you not get stuck in just doing things over and over because they're familiar and they worked a few times, and actually getting to a functional solution that works for this specific problem this time. Another thing is keeping a log of what hasn't worked. Because sometimes, I don't know, we are busy. We've got a lot of things going on. We've tried a lot of different things. We'll say, I've tried everything. I've tried everything. And then you say, okay, well, tell me what things you've done. And then they'll give you one, maybe three, few things. And so keeping a log of what has and hasn't worked in one specific place, in one notebook that's kept in your office, or one computer file that's in your Google Suite is really helpful. And parsing out activities. So, okay, this didn't work here, but it did work here. Because sometimes we try to apply what works for us in business, for example, or in our professional lives to our personal life. And it's a totally different dynamic, but we're good at it. And, we just take those same set of skills and maybe we bring it to a relationship dynamic where it's not working. And so getting clear on what the activity is, what's working and what's not working in what arena can be super helpful in finding an effective solution. Make a list of available tools and methods. Sometimes we have problems and we do know how to fix it, but we don't have said tools, or we don't have the software, or we don't have the platform, or at this particular moment in time, we don't have the resources to buy that tool or that platform. So one of the exercises that I like to do is the problem, the solution, and creating like a diagram of the problems, the solutions, and the ones that you can afford, and finding that window of what you can afford based on what you have to take steps to solve that problem. And what's really cool about something like that is as we start to take some steps forward, it's better than any kind of like stalling and freezing. Because as you start moving around, as you start looking around at different things, you start generating new ideas, time moves forward, solutions open up, and it gets the energy moving so that it's not stuck and stifled and you're just paralyzed and you're not really sure where to go. It helps avoid inaction because objects in motion tend to stay in motion. And then when they stop, they tend to kind of stay there for a while. And you want to reduce your freeze time because some of us have been through, some tough stuff in life. And we've learned almost as a biological process defense mechanism to start freezing. And we suddenly get tired when we start to experience things that kind of trigger that old trauma. So keeping it moving and on to the next one keeps the energy flowing, keeps it in circulation, and it doesn't get stagnant and unhealthy like water. And then the next thing is prioritize the core issue. So sometimes we have a problem or a challenge that we need to fix, but it's like boulders in a river. You've got some pebbles, and then you've got some boulders, and then you've got some like medium-sized rocks. What you want to do to get it flowing forward and solutions forward is to look at what are the main core problems that if they were solved, the water would just come through and clear all that stuff out. You want to look at what are the core issues, identify the root cause of the problem instead of focusing on surface level symptoms. And you can use the 5 whys technique to really drill down to the underlying issue. And that's where you say, why do you want that? Why? Why is that important? And you just keep asking in like the Socratic method, why is that important? And that can help you narrow it down to the core issue, is a helpful thing that we can do in coaching. And another thing, and the last one I'll leave you with, is engage in solution-oriented collaboration. This is different than complaining to your friends, family, or colleagues about whatever the problem is. It's sitting down with other people with complementary skills and perspectives to actively brainstorm, record, and refine and really look at what the possible solutions are together. Collaborative input can create this illumination of any sort of blind spots or any sort of way, but it's different than mindlessly or compulsively complaining about it. It's like, okay, we've identified said problem, write it on the whiteboard. What can we do? And then don't be offended when people come at it from a different perspective. And this is something I've noticed a lot between thinkers and feelers in brainstorming activities, is that feelers, like an ENFP, for example, can get a little hurt when they're very enthusiastic about an idea. And let's say you've got an ISTJ who's got to bring it down, a few notches and get it into something realistic. When you're doing this brainstorming, put your I'm not going to be offended hat on and allow people to offer their perspective from their point of view. That's the whole reason that you have it. And don't try not to. I mean, it's hard. I get it. Because personalities, we kind of butt heads a little bit sometimes. But try not to take it personally and try to be clear that what you're trying to do is not necessarily validate your own idea, but rather brainstorm the collective. And everybody has their own style. And just not taking that personally and deciding not to take that personally in favor of finding an actual, practical, applicable solution is really helpful. Anyway, I hope that this has helped you think about some ways to solve some of your problems. And if you would like support in doing that and coming up with solutions and techniques and tools and systems that really work for you. So I had finished the video and wrapped it all up, and I was going to load it in the video editor. And I looked at the sign which says never give up, but all it said that you could read on the end was give up. And I think that that is an important thing to mention here, is that sometimes we are stuck in the energy of the problem and we can't find the solution on that frequency. So sometimes just saying to whatever your higher power is, I'm done thinking about this. I give this over to you. You worry about it. You think about it. And then the solution comes. Or we ask for a sign and we say, sometimes it's helpful to give it a parameter like rainbows or a triple digit number like 222 or 555 or 444, whatever. You can have whatever your sign is that lets you know that you're on the right track, and then follow the breadcrumbs. But I think it's also really important to remember that maybe you don't know what the absolute best solution is. And yeah, you can do all these different things that I've mentioned to enhance your own problem solving ability. But I probably should have led with this, that there is, at least from my perspective and my belief system, and I'll just offer it to you, is there is an intelligence that already has a solution to any problem before you ever even knew that you had a problem. And to just sometimes keep that in mind can be so soothing and comforting and supportive and helpful when we're scared and we're trying to figure it all out. And sometimes we go to the internet, we go to ChatGPT, we go to our friends, we go to everybody else except turning within, getting really quiet, and listening to that small, still voice. So, one of the first lines of defense when you think that you have a problem is to go to greater intelligence, whatever that is for you. And you can even write it down, and before you go to sleep at night, read over what it is that you're trying to figure out. And not from a worried place, but from an open place. Drink a glass of water and say, when I wake up and I drink the other half of this glass of water, I will remember the solution that came through my dream. And sometimes it takes a few times, but having like a ritual of receptivity to receive the answer to the problem can help you solve it in ways that you couldn't even possibly have fathomed, and that take into account so many different pieces of information that you weren't even looking at. And another way to solve a problem it comes from Louise Hay. Louise Hay, I love her so much. She had an affirmation. She would say, I am safe, all is well, and only good comes from this situation. Or it's some variation of that. I've heard her say it in different ways. I am safe, all is well, only good comes from this situation. And saying that over and over and over again gives your conscious mind something to do. And it keeps you from dwelling in the worry of the problem. And oftentimes, she calls it the universe will just solve it in a way that is just miraculous. So that's another approach. Sometimes we can get in there and we can take a bunch of different perspectives and we can look at an idea and we can brainstorm, but sometimes we just don't know. And there are too many unknown variables and it's just really complex, or maybe we're not in an emotional state to productively think that way. And if you're in that place and you're scared about it, I encourage you to offer it up to a higher intelligence. And I just wanted to make sure that I added that somewhere in this video. Okay.